Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the book of Ecclesiastes. We're in chapter 9 today, and we're going to be looking at verses 1 through 6. But all this I lay to heart, examining it all, how the righteous and the wise and their deeds are in the hand of God. Whether it is love or hate, man does not know. Both are before him. It is the same for all, since the same event happens to the righteous and the wicked, to the good and the evil, to the clean and the unclean, to him who sacrifices and him who does not sacrifice. As the good one is, so is the sinner, and he who swears is as he who shuns an oath. This is an evil in all that is done under the sun, that the same event happens to all. Also, the hearts of the children of man are full of evil, and madness is in their hearts while they live, and after that they go to the dead. But he who is joined to the living with all the living has hope, for a living dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing, and they have no more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Their love and their hate and their envy have already perished, and forever they have no more share in all that is done under the sun. So it's possible for two biblical writers, thinkers, to look at the same set of facts and apply those facts in different ways. So you can read Psalm 90 by Moses and Psalm 103 by David, which quotes Psalm 90 by Moses, covering the same ground, looking at the same facts, that we are sinners, that we're not deserving of God's love, that whatever bad happens to us, we've deserved that and more. And then you can apply those in different ways. With Moses, he's despairing of the human race and just asking God against all hope to take care of us. With David, it's, yes, this is true, but God loves us anyway. That's part of his greatness. The big part of his greatness is that he loves us anyway. He knows who we are, and he loves us anyway. Solomon, in chapter 9, is dealing with the same facts that Jesus deals with in the Sermon on the Mount when he tells us to love our enemies. And that is, the rain falls on the just and the unjust, or doesn't fall. It's not like if two men are living side by side and one is reverent and the other is not, that, the soil that they share will be, as they cultivate the land, will be verdant for one and barren for another, or that God will send rain on the good man's plot and the rain will stop at the boundary of the evil man's plot. So they're looking at this same set of facts. With Solomon, he says this is bad. It ought not be that way. And I've compared Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes multiple times to Jeremiah Johnson in the great movie about the mountain man trying to escape, society. He says it ought to have been different. And the older mountain man, all he can say is that so? And I feel like saying, is that so, to Solomon here? Because Jesus looks at the same fact set, that the rain falls on the just and the unjust, that the same end happens to everyone. And he says it's evidence of God's love of us all and God's impartiality. And his application is that we should love our enemies and pray for them, because God sets the example for us, because the rain falls on the just and the unjust. But let's not forget, Solomon has limited his scope of thought and inquiry to things that are happening under the sun. We're not talking about the difference between heaven and hell, but the difference between life and death, and a life that is lived fully and a life that is wasted. So there is in this chapter, well, throughout the book, but particularly in the next two chapters, there is an undercurrent of carpe diem, and we see that communicated so well at the end of the verses that we read. You know, he sounds a lot like Paul in Romans chapter 3, and Paul, of course, is just quoting, stringing together all these Old Testament quotes on the same theme, that we are evil and that there's no good in us to commend us to God. But thanks be to God, through Jesus Christ we can have redemption. And he says the same thing. The hearts of man are full of evil. This is who we are. And then we have this perhaps the best single statement about seizing the day and living your life that was ever made by anyone. He who is joined with all the living has hope. A living dog is better than a dead lion. Now, we love dogs in our society, and they needed dogs in theirs. Human society from the very beginning until now, and including now, is not possible without the aid of dogs. And we love dogs and make sure they get gourmet dog food from the refrigerator, you know. But to them, a dog was basically a rat, a scavenging street animal. But the lion, and there were lions afoot and would be for many more centuries in that area. They're not now, of course, and they haven't been for more than a millennia, but at the time there were lions roaming about Palestine. The lion was the king of beasts. I mean, it was the apex of the animal world. And he says a living dog is better than a dead lion, and then he explains why. And that theme, that carpe diem theme, is going to be, it's not going to be below the surface at all. It's going to be the ground upon which we tread, really for the next couple of chapters, and really for the rest of the book. Okay, we're going to pick up with verse 7 next time, and we'll read through verse 10. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.